In 53 BC, at the Battle of Carrhae in modern-day Turkey, something unthinkable happened. A Roman army of over 40,000 men, one of the most disciplined fighting forces in the ancient world, was utterly destroyed. Not by a larger army, not by superior armor or siege weapons, but by mounted archers on small horses carrying short curved bows. The Parthians fired volley after volley, shooting backward while retreating, in what the Romans would later call the Parthian shot. Roman shields splintered, formations collapsed. 20,000 Romans died that day, and the weapon that killed them was something the Romans dismissed as barbaric: the composite recurve bow. This wasn't an isolated event. For over 1,000 years, steppe nomads of Central Asia terrorized the ancient world with this weapon. The Greeks called them barbarians, the Romans called them savages, but their bow was one of the most sophisticated weapons ever created. Today we examine this weapon in detail, how it was made, how it worked, and why it dominated battlefields for over a millennium. This is the story of the barbarian bow. The story begins with the Scythians, nomadic peoples who dominated the Eurasian steppe from roughly the 7th to the 3rd century BC. What we know about them comes from Herodotus, who visited their territory around 450 BC. From archaeological excavations, especially the frozen Paseric burials in Siberia, and from depictions on Greek pottery and Scythian gold artwork. The Scythians didn't invent the composite bow. Earlier versions existed in Mesopotamia and Egypt, but they perfected it for mounted warfare in a way no one had before. Herodotus describes them as people who lived entirely on horseback and fought exclusively with the bow. Children began practicing archery as soon as they could ride, and this applied equally to women. Scythian women rode and fought alongside men. Some scholars believe they inspired the Greek legend of the Amazons. Archaeology confirms it. About 20% of warrior graves belong to women. Bows and arrows buried with female skeletons alongside male ones. The bow was central to their way of life. Hunting, warfare, ritual, everything revolved around the mounted archer. So how was this weapon actually constructed? The Scythian composite bow was between 100 and 130 centimeters long, much shorter than the English longbow. This shorter length was essential for shooting from horseback. It was built from 3 materials laminated together. The core was wood, usually birch or maple. On the belly of the bow, the side facing the archer, strips of animal horn were glued. Horn is extraordinarily strong under compression. On the back, the side facing the target, layers of animal sinew were glued. Sinew is incredibly strong under tension. The adhesive was animal glue, typically from boiled fish bladders, extremely strong and flexible. This combination was revolutionary. When the bow is drawn, horn compresses and sinew stretches. Together they store far more energy than wood alone. A composite bow of 120 centimeters could match a wooden bow twice its size. The construction process took 1 to 2 years. Each layer of glue and sinew needed to cure thoroughly in controlled conditions. The bow was shaped with heat and steam to achieve its recurved profile. The distinctive forward curving tips that gave it additional mechanical leverage when drawn. What were the actual performance characteristics? No intact Scythian bow with its original string has survived. The organic materials decompose. What we have are fragments, depictions, and modern reconstructions. Scholars estimate draw weights of 30 to 75 pounds for standard use. Some war bows potentially exceeded this. Modern replicas can send arrows accurately to 150 to 250 meters. Maximum flight distances exceed 400 meters. A trained mounted archer needed to penetrate leather armor at combat distances of 30 to 60 meters. The composite bow delivered this comfortably. Against heavier armor, penetration depended on arrow type, range, and angle of impact. The bow was most devastating against lightly armored targets, which described most armies of the ancient world. The arrows were just as carefully engineered as the bow itself. Early Scythian arrows used two-bladed bronze heads, but by the 5th century BC, the trilobate, three-bladed arrowhead became standard. Aerodynamically superior, causing wider wounds. Shafts were typically reed or birch, with goose feather fletchings to stabilize flight. Herodotus mentions that Scythians used poisoned arrows, coated with a mixture of viper venom and blood. The evidence suggests arrow poisoning was real and widespread. Bow and arrows were stored together in a combined case called a Gorytos, a single leather container worn on the left hip, holding the unstrung bow and up to 75 arrows. Magnificent gold-covered Gorytoi have been found in Scythian royal burials, including the famous example from the Chertomlik kurgan in Ukraine. The bow alone was only half the equation. What made steppe nomads truly devastating was mounted archery combined with extreme mobility. Their horses were small, hardy steppe breeds, ancestors of today's Mongolian horse, capable of covering enormous distances. The core tactic was simple but devastating. Approach at speed, unleash arrows, then retreat before the enemy could close to melee range. If the enemy pursued, archers executed the famous Parthian shot, turning in the saddle and shooting backward at full gallop. This required controlling the horse entirely with legs while twisting 180 degrees to aim and shoot. Herodotus records that the Persian king Darius invaded Scythian territory around 513 BC with a massive army. The Scythians simply refused battle, retreating endlessly, burning grassland, harassing with constant arrow attacks. Darius was forced to withdraw without ever fighting a major engagement. The Scythians defeated a great empire without ever standing and fighting. The Scythian bow did not disappear when the Scythians faded from history. The technology was adopted by successive steppe peoples. The Parthians became famous for mounted archery, giving us the term Parthian shot. In the 4th and 5th centuries AD, the Huns brought a refined version to Europe. Their bows had bone scias on the tips, stiffening plates that increased efficiency.
Hey, yeah! Yeah! For the horde! Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!
Centuries later, the Mongols under Genghis Khan used composite bows that were direct descendants of this same tradition. The basic principle, a short, powerful, recurved composite bow for mounted combat, remained fundamentally unchanged for nearly 2,000 years. The so-called barbarian bow was never barbaric. It was the product of centuries of accumulated knowledge, an elegant engineering solution to the challenges of mounted warfare on the open steppe. It defeated Persian emperors, shattered Roman legions, and shaped the map of Eurasia for over a millennium. The Greeks and Romans called its users barbarians because they didn't build cities or write books. But they built something arguably more impressive, a weapon system that remained dominant longer than the Roman Empire itself existed. Thank you for watching.